You know that feeling when you're trying to get better at something, and it works for a while, but then it just stops. Like you put in the effort, you show up, you do the thing, and for some reason, it doesn't stick. Or it sticks for a few days, maybe a couple of weeks, and then life happens, something shifts, and you're back where you started. And the weird part is, you don't even know what went wrong. You weren't lazy. You didn't give up on purpose. You just drifted. And now you're looking at the same goal again, wondering if it's even worth trying this time. It's not that you don't want to improve. It's not that you don't care. It's just that everything you try feels like it works for everyone else, but not for you. Or maybe it worked once in one area of your life, but it didn't carry over to the rest. You get disciplined with your mornings, but your work is still a mess. You fix your productivity, but your relationships feel distant. You get consistent with exercise, but your mind is still scattered, and you start to wonder, is there something I'm missing? Something underneath all of this that I haven't figured out yet? Because it feels like you're solving the same problem over and over, in different forms. That's the thing about most advice. It's specific. It tells you what to do in one situation, how to build a habit, how to stay focused, how to be more consistent, and it works in that one area. But it doesn't translate. It doesn't spread. And so you end up collecting strategies, like tools you don't really know how to use. Each one works in its own context, but none of them connect. None of them make the whole thing easier. People talk about discipline like it's the answer. And it is, to some things. But discipline doesn't teach you how to think. It doesn't help you see what's actually worth doing. It just makes you better at forcing yourself through things, even when those things don't make sense. People talk about motivation. And sure, motivation helps you start, but it doesn't help you keep going when the feeling fades. It doesn't tell you what to do when you're tired, confused, or stuck between two equally reasonable choices. People talk about systems. And systems are great if you know what system to build. But most of the time, you don't. You're just guessing, trying things, hoping something works. And in the middle of all that, you're still living your life. You still have work, responsibilities, people depending on you, decisions that can't wait, things that need to get done whether you figured it all out or not. So you keep moving, you keep trying, but there's this quiet frustration underneath it all, because you know you could be better. You know you could be sharper, clearer, more effective. You just don't know how to get there. And maybe that's the part no one really talks about, that most of us are doing fine. We're getting by. We're not failing in any obvious way, but we're also not progressing. Not in the way we thought we would. Not in the way that feels like it's building towards something. We're just maintaining. I used to think the problem was effort, that if I just worked harder, stayed up later, pushed through more, things would click. And sometimes they did, for a while. But then I'd burn out, reset, and realize I was back at the same level I started at. Then I thought the problem was knowledge, that if I just learned more, read more, studied the right people, I'd figure it out. And I did learn. A lot. But knowing what to do and actually doing it consistently, those are different things. Then I thought the problem was focus, that I was trying to do too many things at once. So I cut back. I narrowed down. I focused on one thing at a time. And that helped, but only in that one area. The rest of my life didn't get better. It just got ignored. And that's when I started to notice something, a pattern. Something that showed up in every area where I actually made progress, and was missing in every area where I didn't. It wasn't a method. It wasn't a habit. It wasn't even a mindset, really. It was a skill I didn't have a name for at the time, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it, because it was the thing underneath everything else, the thing that made discipline easier, the thing that made focus sharper, the thing that made decisions clearer, And here's the strange part. It's not something people teach. It's not something you find in productivity books or self-help videos. It's not a framework. It's not a system. It's the ability to see what's actually happening in real time, without distortion. Most of the time, we don't see clearly. We see through filters, through assumptions, through emotions, through habits we've repeated so many times we don't even notice them anymore. We see what we expect to see. We interpret things based on how we've always interpreted them. We react the way we've always reacted. And because of that, we keep getting the same results. But when you develop the skill to see clearly, everything changes. Because suddenly, you're not reacting. You're responding. You're not guessing. You're noticing. You're not forcing yourself through things. You're adjusting based on what's actually in front of you. And that changes everything. Not just one area, all of them. Because the skill of seeing clearly applies everywhere. It applies to work. When you can see what's actually slowing you down, not what you think is slowing you down, you stop wasting time on things that don't matter. You stop fixing problems that aren't real. You start solving the right things. It applies to relationships. When you can see what's actually being said, not what you're afraid is being said, you stop reacting defensively. You stop misinterpreting. You start connecting. It applies to habits. When you can see what's actually stopping you from being consistent, not what you've been telling yourself is stopping you, you stop blaming willpower. You start removing friction. It applies to decisions. When you can see what you actually want, not what you think you should want, you stop second-guessing. You stop feeling stuck. You start moving. This is the skill most people are missing. And it's the reason why everything else feels harder than it should. Because without it, you're always working with incomplete information. You're always reacting to shadows. You're always solving the wrong problem. And no amount of discipline, motivation, or strategy can fix that. Think about the last time you tried to change something. Maybe you wanted to wake up earlier, so you set an alarm. And for a few days, it worked. But then it stopped working. And you assumed the problem was willpower. But what if the problem wasn't willpower? What if the problem was that you were going to bed too late because you were scrolling your phone, because you were avoiding something you didn't want to think about? See, the surface problem was waking up early, but the real problem was 3 layers deeper. And if you can't see that, you'll keep trying to fix the alarm. Or think about work. Maybe you feel unproductive. So you try a new system, a new app, a new schedule, and it helps for a while. But then you're back to feeling scattered. But what if the problem wasn't your system? What if the problem was that you're working on things that don't actually move anything forward because you're afraid of the things that do? The surface problem was productivity, but the real problem was avoidance. And if you can't see that, you'll keep switching systems. This happens everywhere. In relationships, we think the problem is communication, but the real problem is that we're not listening. In health, we think the problem is motivation, but the real problem is that we haven't connected the behavior to something we actually care about. We spend so much time trying to fix the surface that we never get to the root, and that's what this skill does. It gets you to the root, not through analysis, not through overthinking, but through noticing. You start to notice the gap between what you say you want and what you actually do. You start to notice the patterns you repeat without thinking. You start to notice the assumptions you make that aren't true. And once you notice, you can adjust. You don't need to force yourself anymore. You don't need to fight yourself. You just see what's happening, and you make a different choice. It sounds simple, and in a way, it is. But it's also the hardest thing to do, because it requires you to be honest with yourself. Not in a harsh way, not in a judgmental way, just honest. And most of us aren't. We lie to ourselves constantly, not maliciously, just habitually. We tell ourselves we don't have time. when really we just don't want to do it. We tell ourselves we're too tired, when really we're just bored. We tell ourselves we'll do it tomorrow, when really we're just scared. And as long as we keep lying, we stay stuck. But when you develop the skill to see past those lies, to see what's actually true, everything starts to shift. Let's say you're sitting at your desk. You have work to do, but you're not doing it. You're scrolling. You're distracted. You're procrastinating. Most people would force themselves to focus, or feel guilty, or tell themselves they're lazy. But if you have this skill, you pause, you notice, you ask, what's actually happening here? And maybe you realize you're procrastinating because the task feels too big, or because you don't know where to start, or because you're afraid it won't be good enough. And now, you're not fighting yourself. You're working with yourself. You break the task down. You start with the easiest part. You lower the standard just enough to get moving. Same situation, different outcome. Because you saw clearly. Or let's say you're talking to someone, and they say something, and you feel defensive. Most people would react, snap back, shut down, pull away. But if you have this skill, you pause, you notice, you ask, what's actually happening here? And maybe you realize they're not attacking you, they're just frustrated. Or they're trying to say something else and it came out wrong. Or you're hearing it through a filter you didn't know you had. And now, you're not reacting, you're responding. You ask a question, you clarify, you stay open. Same conversation, different outcome. Because you saw clearly. This is what changes everything. Not the big decisions, not the grand plans. Just seeing clearly in the small moments. And the more you do it, the better you get. The faster you notice, the easier it becomes. It's like building a muscle. At first, you have to remind yourself. You have to slow down. You have to check in. But over time, it becomes automatic. You start seeing clearly without trying. And when that happens, everything else gets easier. You don't need as much discipline because you're not fighting yourself. You don't need as much motivation because you're not forcing things that don't fit. You don't need as many systems because you're adjusting in real time. You just move clearly, steadily, toward what actually matters. This is the skill that applies to everything. It's not flashy. It's not exciting. It doesn't promise overnight transformation. But it's real. And it compounds. Because every time you see clearly, you make a better choice. And every better choice builds. And over time, those small, clear choices add up to a completely different life. Not because you forced it. Not because you followed someone else's plan. But because you learned to see and respond to what's actually in front of you. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. How much time we spend looking for the right answer, when the real work is just seeing the right question. We want someone to tell us what to do, what system to follow, what habit to build, and sometimes that helps. But only if we can see clearly enough to know if it actually fits. Because what works for someone else might not work for you, and what worked for you last year might not work for you now. But if you have this skill, you don't need to guess. You just notice, adjust, move forward. And that's what makes it different. That's what makes it last. You're not dependent on motivation. You're not dependent on the perfect plan. You're not dependent on anything outside of you. You're just awake, present, clear, and from that place, everything becomes possible. So maybe the question isn't, what should I do next? Maybe the question is, what am I not seeing? What assumption am I making? That isn't true. What pattern am I repeating that I haven't noticed? What story am I telling myself that's keeping me stuck? And when you start asking those questions, when you start seeing clearly, you'll find that most of the answers were already there. You just couldn't see them yet. But now you can. And that changes everything.